The story begins with the ancient and dark family, Ophrysirate, known as the most mysterious lineage of alchemists of that world, obsessed with understanding the laws of the universe and achieving divinity through the physical body. These alchemists, madden spread biochemical disasters across the land. However, 300 years ago, the family fell into decline for unknown reasons. The only talented heir left was Isaac Ophrysirate, the greatest alchemist of his time. He vowed to restore the family's glory, creating weapons, biochemical that could rival the gods themselves. After 400 days of intense work, he was about to complete his most powerful creation, called Final Calamity. During this process, Isaac gave orders to a rat, who served as his assistant. Although the relationship between the two was disastrous, they were testing the creation on a subject with weak heartbeats and unstable temperature, but with vital signs still active. In the final phase, Isaac added substances to the subject's body. The last step was to drain the azote fluid, reduce the pressure, and open the tank. When the tank was opened, he was anxious. That was his greatest creation, capable of destroying the world. In hands, he had a drawing of the ideal appearance of the Final Calamity, a ghostly creature that would bring absolute domination. But what came out of the tank was the opposite of what he imagined. Instead of a terrifying monster, a blonde woman appeared, beautiful and without any supernatural appearance. Isaac was frustrated, but decided to watch her carefully. The rat warned that direct contact with the test violated Isaac's own protocols, but he didn't care. He thought that feminine form could just be a natural defense of the Final Calamity. He imagined her breasts were actually energy containers. He decided to confirm this personally. After the test concluded that it was just an ordinary human being, he soon realized that important parts were missing. The left arm of the Angel of Extinction that had been implanted was not present. The Emerald Empress's eyes were also not there, and the perpetual mechanical heart type didn't work. Because Isaac didn't hear the sound of blood circulating, there is warning. The Final Calamity attacked its own creator. The rat, seeing this, thought he alone would inherit the family legacy. Ophrysirate. He had even prepared Zal's epitaph. But the alchemist, even fallen, began to threaten his assistant. The rat believed he was cruel, even at the hour of death. On the ground, there was experimental blood, with mutant fire properties. That meant Isaac Ophrysirate was still alive. Isaac reminded the rat that he himself had placed one liquid soul extraction, manifested in the process. That meant his soul had one natural affiliation, and because of that he would not suffer serious damage. The confused rat didn't remember doing that. However, after thinking better, he realized that he had actually done it. Only he was a little drunk at the time. Instead of following the correct procedure, he ended up putting the soul extraction in the drink itself. Upon realizing this, the rat thought everything was over for him. But Isaac wasn't worried about that. At the moment, he just wanted that final amidade. Get off of him. However, the creature continued to behave as if he were her boyfriend. This made Isaac furious. He got up quickly and feeling the exposed, and asked for the purification spray. Then, pressed a button that sealed the blonde girl back inside the tank. After that, Isaac had a snap, began searching for an old document, while the rat watched, without understanding what he was doing. Soon after he found what he was looking for, it was confirmation of his suspicions. That blonde girl inside the tank was the same human used as a base, original for the Final Calamity experiment. Human era 2252. This girl had been rescued 1 year before. At the time she was in serious condition, without 2 arms and 2 legs, almost dying. The strange detail is that she had purple hair at the time, but now her hair was blonde. The most worrying, however, was that her personality also seemed different. It all started in an episode involving the White Queen Bank. In the Golden City, a type of gas was released throughout the building. Bazaar and his subordinate were hiding inside the men's bathroom, waiting for the gas to take effect. When people fell unconscious, they took action. One of the guards, still awake, found it absurd that someone would try to rob the White Queen Bank. But Isaac silenced with an experimental weapon that turned him into slime. Then, they broke into the vault and took all the money available. Isel believed that this had been the perfect robbery. He thought he was the best criminal in the Golden City. Now that he had completed the creation of the Calamity, finally he said that the city would be their amusement park. When he revealed his identity, he believed that the Perserade family would become famous throughout the world. Suddenly, a shot was fired in their direction. They managed to escape, but they didn't know who had shot. The author of the shot was an agent of the city's security inspection, Golden, or director of the Lighthouse District Branch. His name was Vandy Gitney, better known as the hero of the bullet. Vandy was chasing a purple-haired girl. She didn't have an arm, nor one of her legs. Isel and his rat assistant didn't understand, because that man was after such a debilitated girl. But the reason was simple. That human had murdered 5 of one's best detectives. And now, completely vulnerable, she was still a target. We wanted to get the list of murders from her, committed by the Pia. The girl, though, had no vocal cords. She had been modified in experiments by the operating unit itself. Then Van led. He himself forgot about it. In the heat of the moment, before she could make any move, he shot her hand. During the approach, he found an old teddy bear with her. She showed that that object was important, trying to protect him. But Vandio destroyed him before his eyes. That left her in shock. He declared that, even if he couldn't recover the list, he would take her corpse, as he would still have a good reward. Isel would never have imagined that the nemesis of the city's criminals, Golden, was, in the end, a man obsessed with money. Wendy immediately became alert upon realizing the protagonist's presence. Without hesitation, Isel Perserade introduced himself as the most evil criminal in the city, Golden, and the greatest alchemist of the century. Soon after, introduced his trusted companion, the Mad Rat Doctor, his assistant. The old agent began to underestimate the two, but Isel, acting quickly, threw bags full of money in his direction. It was at that moment that Vandy understood that that money had been stolen from the White Queen's bank. And worse, the two were bragging about it, as if it were a great feat. Vandy thought it was all pathetic in his view. Just insecure and low self-esteem criminals felt the need to show off. For him, whoever does this is nothing more than a failed newbie, despite not liking to kill beginners. Because he said his bullets were too expensive for that. Decided to make an exception. Gave 3 halves for the two to run. But Isel, always bold, claimed he wanted to see the best shooter in town. Van prepared to grant his wish. But something strange happened. When pulling the trigger, he couldn't. The weapon felt heavy in his hand. His body didn't respond. Ended up falling to his knees. It was then that he realized the truth. Inside the money bag, there was a special gas that interfered with human nerve cells. Vandy thought the two had appeared to rescue the girl. But he was wrong. They didn't want to act like heroes. In fact, they despised the city's so-called saviors. Isel had no mercy. Used his weapon to transform Andy Gitney, the bullet hero, into slime. In the end, even those who have a silver-level hero license were no big deal to them. They decided to clean up the entire crime scene, so that no traces remained. It was at this moment that Zal noticed something important. The girl was still alive, despite having amputated limbs, broken ribs, and signs of rot in parts of the body. She kept breathing. He watched it with fascination. It was amazing that someone, such critical condition, was still alive. He began to wonder, what was so special about that woman, to be treated with such brutality? The rain began to fall. Already in retreat, Isel decided to return. He picked up the purple-haired woman and took her with him. They performed an emergency surgery on her. The rat couldn't believe what they were doing. For him, that was an act of salvation. Azizeo was not interested in saving anyone. His goal was to transform that woman into a biological weapon. Superior, the final calamity, created previously. Something so powerful that it could destroy the world and surpass even the weapons of the gods. For that, the host of the final calamity needed to gather negative emotions to an extreme degree, like pain, sadness, anger, and despair. But there was an even rarer requirement. Deep in the soul, there should be a fragment of the purest goodness. That was the element that would make it possible. Control the calamity. All previous experiences failed because they did not possess this piece. Aizal understood that woman gathered all these conditions. As she was on the verge of death, he decided to immediately carry out the experiment, using her body as a base. All transplants and modifications were applied to her that same night, and thus the code test subject was born. 2252. From there, the routine observation procedures would begin. Cultivation and testing. If she failed, she would be eliminated. But Aizal decided to leave that for the next day. That night, he tried to rest, but couldn't sleep. Even with the reinforced tank glass wall, he felt restless. Something bothered him. Just to make sure everything was under control, the test subject had behaved very well inside the facility, although she trembled all the time. In the end, Aizal thought she was just afraid of sleeping alone. But even if that was the reason, he saw no reason to care about that. After all, she was just an experiment. Even so, he couldn't ignore the situation and decided to free her. Intended to leave her in a more suitable place to rest. On the way, passed through several sessions of the base, including the so-called nightmare nest, an observation area with compartments, where were the most dangerous individuals, who always talked about devouring Aizal live. Despite the risk, he thought it would be a good idea to place her between compartments number 815, since these were the calmest among the high-risk subjects. For him, the final calamity didn't need to be alone anymore, and so he could finally sleep in peace. However, the other subjects were confused when they realized the presence of a human. Among them, some had heard rumors that she was the one final calamity, but they thought it was impossible, as she seemed like just a common, weak girl. Meanwhile, the girl tried to break free, banging hard on the glass of the cell, but she couldn't cause any damage. The structure was extremely resistant, and if it weren't for those monsters, they would have escaped a long time ago. It was only when she concentrated a strange energy in the arm and let it flow completely that the glass broke easily, surprising everyone around. She escaped, but she seemed so surprised by what she had done against the others. Upon witnessing that demonstration of power, the high-risk subjects changed their attitude. They started treating her like a leader and asked her to free them, promising loyalty to her. Meanwhile, Aizal slept peacefully until an alarm sounded throughout the base. It was a level 4 emergency alert, indicating a problem in the containment of the most dangerous subjects. The crazy cat, his assistant, reported that the affected compartments were F-202, with subject number 8, the F-204, with number 15, and the F-203, which in theory should be empty. Upon hearing this, Aizal decided to check personally, and was even satisfied upon noticing that the girl had managed to manifest the left arm that had been transplanted from the Angel of the Apocalypse, quickly followed to the containment area, where he found the subjects destroying everything. He just wanted them to stop the mess. But the monsters were furious for having been kept imprisoned for so long, and now they wanted revenge. Without wasting time, Aizal launched a smoke grenade, loaded with spider eggs, in the face of the dragon of chaos. Since those spiders parasitized dragons and beings similar, before the other subject could react, Aizal attacked his eye directly, leaving him blind for a moment. Even annoyed, he demanded that they both return to their compartments, but was interrupted by the arrival of the final calamity, whose presence was cause for concern. Because if she lost control, the consequences would be catastrophic. The dragon of chaos tried to convince the girl that everyone there had only been guinea pigs, and that she had also been used, saying it would be fair to get revenge for all this. In theory, did not exist. No material capable of containing the final calamity with total security. And when she jumped towards the protagonist, as much as the chaos dragon, as much as the eye of the abyss, they thought she would end him right there. But to everyone's surprise, she didn't attack. On the contrary, began to show affection, as if she was happy to see him. And Zal hated that. Even so, understood that she no longer wanted to sleep in that sector, and that he would need to find another place to accommodate her. He agreed, even if bothered, because the girl acted like a puppy around him, which made him completely irritated. In the end, the Dragon of Chaos feels guilty, confessed that it had been him who suggested that she destroy the compartment. Upon hearing this, Isel was furious, because all that had disturbed his sleep. Isel put the Chaos Dragon inside an extremely ridiculous containment suit. That was more than security. It was humiliation. Already the Eye of the Abyss was forced to endure onions around him, which for him was almost torture. These were the punishments the two received for the chaos that caused. Now Isel needed to solve a new problem. The final calamity. Didn't want to sleep in the lab. Not even in containment class. He didn't know where she would spend the night. Crazy Rat suggested that she stay in Zal's own room, but he thought the idea was stupid. Even so, the rat insisted, saying she was very attached to him, and maybe that would avoid more problems. Isel thought better, and remembered that he used some of the extract of her soul in the process, which may have created a natural affinity between them. It was then that Crazy Rat revealed that he himself had put the extract in his own drink, and ended up taking it unintentionally. Said he found the smell pleasant and couldn't resist. Isel got irritated, but didn't even have time to argue, because the girl went straight into the aquarium and started hunting one of the creatures that lived there. He got upset right away, because he gave orders and she simply ignored, pulled her back, and the two ended up falling to the ground together. She stayed on top of him, and he forbade her from entering there again. The rat commented that he needed to learn to speak more gently, because if she lost control, no one would be able to contain her. Suddenly she started sneezing, as if she had caught a cold. He prepared a bath and activated a scanner to check her health status. No normality was detected. Still, he hesitated to put her in his own bathtub, because he didn't want contact with the bacteria that could be on her. Even reluctant, he ordered her to take a bath, explained everything, and left the room. But she didn't understand that she should wait for him to leave before entering. When he turned his back, she entered together, and he was desperate. Tried to stay calm, remembering that she was just an experiment, as she didn't know what to do. He had to teach her, including washing her hair. When he was about to leave to let her dry, slipped and fell into the bathtub again. She could only emit one hoarse sound, like one grunt. That's when Crazy Rat appeared and saw the two together. In his head, that was a sign of progress, and they were already understanding each other. Had already given up resisting. Picked up the hairdryer and tried to dry her hair. But she was terrified. Thought the hairdryer was a weapon. He blinked, and she was already gone. Was hiding behind the curtain, trembling. He didn't understand how someone who didn't feel fear of the dragon, of chaos, or the Eye of the Abyss could react like that. He soon realized that the shape of the hairdryer resembled a pistol. Her brain still held the memories from before becoming an experiment. She remembered when she was hunted. Isel thought that experiment could bring many problems, but still decided to continue. He picked up the hairdryer again and showed it to the girl, who was quite scared, just seeing the object in his hands. To try to calm her down, Isel decided to use the hairdryer on him, even showing that nothing bad was going to happen. He even did some clowning around to make her more comfortable. It worked. The girl started laughing and relaxed. After a while, she took the hairdryer by herself and started playing with it, apparently without any fear. However, time was passing too fast, and Isa didn't want to spend the whole night there. So he got annoyed, took the hairdryer from her hands and put it away, saying that if she behaved well, she could play with that again in the future. But at that moment she needed to sleep. While he was trying to decide where she could sleep, since he wouldn't allow her to stay in his bed, the girl simply lay down right there, and soon fell asleep. Isel tried to take her out of there, but realized that there was not much point in insisting, so he just made it clear that she was not allowed to occupy that space, and put her to sleep on the floor. He also established several rules, the most important of which was not to make any noise, even trying to rest. Isel continued to worry. That thing, that girl they called the final calamity, was in the same room as him. Although she seemed harmless, he remembered that she could be aggressive, and wasn't sure if he would go into berserk mode. during the night. However, when looking at her, saw that she was sleeping peacefully on the floor, without any sign of agitation, which made him finally close his eyes and try to sleep. During the night, Isel heard a noise, and when he looked, he realized she was shaking. Worried, he decided to ask for help to the crazy rat, but the rat was sleeping deeply and wouldn't wake up for anything. Impatient, Isel took an insect and put it on his nose, causing him to wake up. Angry with the provocation, Isel then asked if he had any blankets to spare. The rat realized that the boy was trying to help the final calamity and started making fun of the situation. Without understanding why the concern, he said he had dozens of blankets. But Isel, being methodical, explained that each blanket was used on a specific day of the week, and that he followed this cycle without fail. In the end, the rat didn't want to lend any, so Isel took one of his own blankets and covered the girl, so she could sleep better. Later, when he finally managed to sleep, the final calamity got up discreetly. In the morning, the crow woke Isel at the usual time, but to his surprise, when opening his eyes, he realized that the girl was lying next to him, in bed. Again, he couldn't believe her audacity to go up there again. Right after, the crazy rat entered the room, and Isel tried to hide the girl, knowing that the rat would be worried. With any movement, unexpected on her part, the rat started looking for her, and that made him more tense. Upon realizing that the friend was hiding the final calamity, the concern grew, because she could still pose a danger. Isel tried to change the focus and suggested that the rat go check the monitoring room. But before he left the room, the girl reappeared. She was having trouble breathing, which made him approach. Seeing this, the rat changed his attitude, understanding that Isel's interest in that experiment was genuine, and that there was something more to that girl than they seemed. Their destructive instincts. Despite everything, Isel didn't like the situation at all, and to get revenge, threw a spray, extremely smelly, on the face of the crazy rat, who, having an extremely sensitive sense of smell, suffered a lot from this. Then, the two went together to the experiment area, where they would carry out a battery of physical tests on the girl, known as the final calamity. They started by measuring her height. That was 171 centimeters. And then they weighed her body. That marked 64 kilos. Continuing, they assessed her lung capacity, her flexibility, endurance, and they even made her run for a while. Also, they tested her physical strength with a blood pressure device, and all the data collected indicated that she was no different from an ordinary human. Crazy Rat believed this only happened because she hadn't activated yet her combat mode, which left the results below expectations. However, he wanted to see exactly that combat mode in action. The problem was that they hadn't yet discovered how to activate this state. Without alternatives, the boy decided that the only solution was to put the girl face to face with a real threat. For that, he needed a violent and dangerous guinea pig. So he decided to use the super high-risk person, an extremely unstable individual. The crazy rat thought the idea was completely crazy and suggested that they use an experimental creature, weak and harmless, like the prairie white rabbit. It was then that Isel remembered that he had a small rat used in tests. But before he could use it, the crazy rat took the little animal from his hands and prevented it from being sacrificed, making it clear that he was making the wrong decisions. Without another option, Isel handed the white rabbit over to Final Calamity, hoping that her battle instinct would be awakened. In front of the creature, the mad rat believed that the contrast between the rabbit's harmless appearance and the girl's wild nature might provoke some kind of bloodthirsty reaction. However, what happened was the complete opposite of what was expected. Instead of attacking, the girl started treating the rabbit with great affection and care, which left the two researchers completely without reaction, as they didn't expect this type of behavior coming from her. In light of this, Isel decided to increase the risk. He took a dangerous serum and injected it into the rabbit, causing the animal to undergo a violent mutation, increasing drastically in size and gaining a monstrous and destructive appearance. His idea was simple. If the enemy showed intention to fight first, maybe the girl would fight back. According to his theory, the way of combat would only be activated if she was challenged. The mad rat not convinced, bet with another boy that the girl would run away, while Isa firmly believed that she would face the rabbit. The mutant rabbit became so strong that, with a single blow, completely destroyed the ground where he was. The girl who had disappeared for a few moments reappeared in a surprising way. She was inside the creature's body, and that's how she managed to defeat it from the inside. Right after knocking her down, she went back to treating the mutant rabbit with the same affection as before, as if nothing had happened. In the end, both Isa, as well as the crazy rat, had lost their bets, since the girl's behavior contradicted all expectations. With the physical tests completed, the two decided to start a new phase of the experiment. This time, they would take the girl to the experimental detention room, located on the ultra-high-risk floor. The objective was clear: put her in a situation where if she died, it would be considered a total failure. Before entering, put a mask on her. But the crazy rat warned his friend that, if she died, all items, valuable items that had been transplanted into her body, would be lost, which would be a huge loss. Even so, Sal didn't want her to die. What he wanted was for the girl to feel the smell of death up close, and before that, awaken the true power that dwells within her. If she couldn't activate the mode of combat, even in this situation, then could never be called the final calamity. Tired of so many failures and uncertainties, Isel wanted a definitive answer, but was surprised when the girl started to offer affection, which only increased his frustration. He made it clear to her that that was the moment to use everything he had learned and show his true power. His only existential purpose was to become a biological weapon, and she needed to understand that. In the next stage, the girl was placed to face an opponent, totally different. This time, it was a humanoid creature that, despite its appearance, was also part of the experiments. Her name was Lucille, and she seemed to recognize Azao, as she had spent 1,332 days without seeing him. When she met him again, she was extremely happy. Azao explained that he had created the new final calamity, and that Lucille was no longer the strongest experiment. Lucille did not accept that. She always believed she was the apex of all his creations. Meanwhile, the new final calamity entered the room and hugged Azao, which made Lucille very jealous. That scene awakened in her an intense desire to fight and prove that she was still more powerful. After Azao introduced the blonde girl, he made it clear that, if Lucille wanted to regain her title of Supreme Experiment, she would have to defeat that new creation. Lucille agreed to the proposal, but imposed a condition. The protagonist accepted. If she could win, she would be free. Determined to win, Lucille guaranteed that she would leave the blonde girl in the middle vision, and then asked the current calamity to give it her all. Explained that if she didn't fight this time, she would really die, and that if she died, that would only confirm the failure of the experiment. He didn't intend to interfere to save her. However, the girl didn't seem to understand the gravity of the situation. The security door was closed, and the new calamity started hitting it. Didn't want to be away from Isa. The protagonist believed that this time, everything would go as planned. Lucille was temporarily released. It had been a long time since she could move her body freely. The fight between the two was about to begin. But Lucille found the other girl very strange. She showed no will to fight or kill. When Lucille tried to launch an attack, the new calamity held her hand. This move surprised both the protagonist, as the mad rat, who started celebrating. For the first time, the experiment seemed to react. However, the blonde girl didn't intend to fight. Instead, she held Lucille and pointed at the door. Just wanted to draw attention so someone would open it. This deeply irritated Isel and the mad rat, because they believed things were finally working. Lucille found that funny. In the end, Isel had created one idiot human, placing the blonde girl she completely poisoned. Wanted to prove that she was still the most powerful biological weapon. Soon the two realized that the Black Plague virus was corroding the girl's flesh and organs. But Isel thought that was impossible. He had inserted red blood cells into the blood, fetal from the cocoon of despair, that should eliminate any pathology. Even so, Isel didn't see the situation as something bad. In a way, that could force the girl to become the true final calamity. After all, perhaps only death could awaken her true strength. Meanwhile, Lucille was having fun with the blonde girl and was looking forward to spending the day with the protagonist, as he did not appear to interrupt the situation. Lucille believed that he didn't care about the new calamity, so she decided to end the show. Doing the virus advance until it reaches 90% of the girl's body. Mad Rat tried to stop, as there were many valuable organs in the girl's body that were transplanted and worth a large amount. But the protagonist did not let him interfere. The two started arguing. Izao reminded the rat that the objective of all this was to make the world bow before their family. Suddenly, the blonde girl started talking and called for her master. Mad Rat was confused, wanting to know if the protagonist had taught her something. Izao admitted that one night he had taught a little. He remembered well when he allowed her to sleep in bed for 30 minutes, on the condition of calling him master. Her vocal cords had been damaged by artificial burns, but with the use of azote extract, several parts of the body were restored, including the vocal cords. He believed she just had forgotten how to speak. He then asked her to recite. The girl tried very hard. Even so, he lost patience and allowed her to sleep a little. In the end, Lucilia found it useless for her to keep calling the protagonist master, as he didn't need something as weak as that girl. When Lucilia was about to kill her, the protagonist finally acted and placed a collar around the neck of the woman with hair white, feigning an explanation. He told the rat that in fact the rat was right. The girl's transplanted organs were valuable and could not be wasted if Lucilia's devoured. The crazy rat believed he had pressed the emergency button just because the final calamity called him master. He went to the location to remove the blonde girl, who again called him master. But the protagonist didn't like that, thought she wasn't worthy of that title. Lucille didn't understand why he was doing that, since on other occasions, he made her fight against several experiments and never, I'll intervene. This time, she had been treated in a special way. Isol tried to justify, saying that the value was in the blonde girl's organs, and that Lucilia was interpreting everything wrong. Meanwhile, the crazy rat was in the monitoring room and realized that Lucilia's body temperature was rising in alarming. He warned immediately that the protagonist needed to leave the containment cell. The control system of Lucilia's alchemy matrix riot had failed, and the temperature increase was very fast. It wasn't just a problem with the collar. The real reason was that living beings evolve according to the environment. During the 1,000 days she was imprisoned in the cell, Lucilia repeatedly triggered the cold matrix extreme of the collar. With that, she developed total resistance to the cold. Now the protagonist was trying to escape the situation, promising to fulfill the agreement made with her. But for Lucille, spending a day with him was no longer enough. Without hesitating, she started infecting the boy with viruses, smiling for finally being able to enter his body. Crazy Act was in shock upon realizing that the protagonist's body was infected with the Black Plague virus. However, Lucilia had left the virus in a dormant state. It would only attack if she decided. The real problem was another. During the training, the blonde girl had kissed the protagonist, even without his consent. Like the blonde girl's saliva came into contact with the protagonist's body. The Black Plague virus began to fear that substance. Lucille didn't believe what she was seeing in the boy's body, dominated by jealousy, tried to understand what was happening, and began to injure the final calamity. Crazy Rat was also shocked by the situation. Lucille possessed advanced recognition of bioelements in human cells. Using her powers, she held the blonde girl and considered what had happened unforgivable. Decided to use the Black Plague to invade all the girl's nerve cells and cause the maximum amount of suffering. Lucille, being the assimilation body of the host, and the virus itself, was the most powerful result Isol had ever created. She was able to withstand any compound, organic or inorganic. Not even dragon spider venom or slime toxins maker were effective against her. The only substance that could suppress Lucille was the ultra-low temperature of the array containment collar. Alchemical. However, she had already developed resistance to it. the substance of the void, which was still in the testing phase, could annihilate Lucille. But the risk was high. Isel didn't know if that would also destroy the entire base. In that moment, the Mad Rat tried to give an idea. Recalled that the protagonist was everything to Lucille, while Lucille was about to corrode completely the flesh and blood of the blonde girl. Isel decided to act with blackmail. Said he would leave that world. Lucille wanted to know if he was just trying to threaten. She explained that the girl herself was not important, but the experiments on her body were vital to his family. Without these components, he would not be able to restore the glory of the lineage, nor achieve world domination. So he no longer saw any point in continuing to live, and he would leave for good. Lucille, hearing this, perfectly understood the message. Isel realized he had discovered a new method to control Lucille, but she ignored everything he said, was determined to digest the blonde girl, because she believed that only then would she conquer the world. By his side, Isel recognized that he still had one last card up his sleeve. He proposed a new blackmail, said that if Lucille wanted to sleep with him every day, should stop immediately what was doing. This aroused her interest, and he tried to keep his word. In the end, Lucilia agreed to spare the blonde girl, however, imposed two requirements. First, wanted to switch places with the girl. She herself would stay forever, locked in the containment room. In exchange, the blonde girl would leave and live with the protagonist. The protagonist thought that all that was getting too difficult. Lucy's second request was something extremely embarrassing for him. Even so, she wanted to show the blonde girl and tried to wake her up. Without hesitation, Lucy gave the protagonist a kiss right in front of the blonde girl. This caused the final calamity to feel a pain in her chest. After this uncomfortable moment, the Isel started spraying disinfectant on his own face. Suddenly, the blonde girl started to catch fire. She grabbed Lucille by the neck so easily that it seemed like the other weighed nothing. Isa and the Mad Rat Doctor watched that and realized that she was activating the power of the Angel's left hand destroyer. The final calamity made it clear that she hated Lucille. Meanwhile, the Sparrow Dragon had already consumed the royal butterfly fluid. Emerald Did You King, and surprisingly did not lose consciousness. But the protagonist no longer cared. Sheo had safely escaped from the ring of purgatory, and that was what really mattered to him. The purple-haired girl thought that his sacrifice, made without her permission, was not something worthy of gratitude. In fact, she thought he was a complete idiot. When the dragon Sparrow tried to attack her, Sean reacted with a quick counterattack and managed to defend himself. Then, she asked him to never leave her again. Even so, gave him a kick in the face. For her, that kiss was completely out of place, and it seemed like he just wanted to kiss her on purpose. It was at this moment that the director of Seven asked for the recordings to be stopped. They started taking care of the flaming bird, which was also part of the film. Meanwhile, in the Golden City, at the 12th temporary filming base, built inside an artificial volcano, the city's heroine made her appearance. The White Queen, ranked as number 2, was a world-famous actress. The film director tried to calm her down, explaining that the boy was a new recruit. He didn't know all the rules of the place yet. Even so, was the actor, most perfect male they could find. But the White Queen was not convinced. Thought he only had appearance. According to her, the boy didn't inherit any traits of his father's charm. His acting was terrible, so she demanded that he be replaced. The director understood, as she knew that the Queen's father had sunk that big city. However, she explained that they had already done 700 actor substitutions, and the budget was running out. White Queen replied that, if the problem was money, she would put another 200 million in the budget. Said it was enough to withdraw the amount from the bank, but soon received worrying news. The attack was carried out by a pair of thieves, a human and a human-like rodent. They planted a poisonous gas device, timed in the bank's air outlet, paralyzing everyone inside. Before carrying out the robbery, investigators even showed her what was used in the action. Besides that, the boss of the security patrol department from the One Lighthouse district was hit by an unknown biochemical weapon. The effect turned it into a slime. Now the Lighthouse district was asking for help from headquarters. In the end, White Queen declared that the incompetent people in the security department should no longer interfere. In that case, her clothes changed shape, her hair gained a new color, and she demanded that the entire group be mobilized. The order was to capture the thieves at any cost. Filming was suspended, as she had much more important matters to resolve. Even with all the confusion, White Queen almost forgot about the boy who was acting with her. He tried to apologize, but she didn't want to listen. Without hesitating, stuck an ice cube in his mouth, showing that she had no mercy. Meanwhile, the purple-haired girl began to remember her past. She held her teddy bear tightly and trembled a lot. A woman with a cruel expression approached, asking who had let the girl play with the toys. While scrubbing the floor, the woman snatched the teddy bear from her hand and threw it into the bucket with water. That was her aunt named Gilman, who always mistreated the girl and even slapped her in the face. The girl's father, Mario, thought there was no need for so much violence, just because the girl had spilled some water on the floor. But Gilmu remembered constantly who had changed his life, said that she was the one who took him out of an extra role in a bankrupt theater troupe that barely had anything to eat. She turned him into the most famous playwright in the kingdom and didn't want him to forget that. At that moment, a masked man appeared. He wanted to know if they were offering a child to be trained as soldier. Mario did not understand the reason for that man's presence. Already Gilma, without hesitating, confirmed that she was offering the girl. The man was part of an organization called Hell Rounds. Mario couldn't believe it when he realized that Gilma was cooperating with that group. She just wanted to get rid of the girl. Had heard that the members of Hell Rounds were trained since childhood, and even their father had applied for the position of commander of the organization. The man approached and looked fixedly at the purple-haired girl. In the end, thought she was good material to become a dog of hell. He liked what he saw and decided to take her. The final calamity now possessed all these memories. Meanwhile, the protagonist and the crazy rat doctor were preparing to perform surgery on a rabbit. Gigantic. Elsewhere in the center of the real rounds, the leader, known as the dog handler, was with a green-haired girl who seemed to cast some kind of spell on him. Doberman soon arrived, the organization's first dog trainer, to greet his master. The leader wanted to know what had happened. In the most recent mission, Doberman reported that Castor Rottweiler, Butterfly and Gold, had been killed by the city's heroes, who were infiltrated in Gordon's Golden District city. At the end, the leader of Hell Rounds, I couldn't believe that his most powerful men had failed to enter the district. Golden, the only survivor, was Yorkshire, but her whereabouts were unknown. While all this was happening, the protagonist decided that the final calamity would have a name, would calls Queer, but he wouldn't explain to anyone the reason for this choice. From that moment on, Queer became the test subject of Ultra Risk Number 1. Lucille, in turn, had lost her position and now occupied second place. Queer's greatest advantage, as a subject of an extreme risk experiment, was her docile personality. Even so, she had many weaknesses. The boy wanted to understand what the right trigger would be to activate her powers. He believed that last time, she used her abilities just because she didn't want to sleep in that place. As for the mad rat doctor, he thought it all happened because the girl, Blonde, wanted to sleep next to the boy. But the protagonist preferred not to believe that. 3 days before, Curry used her powers for the second time. During a confrontation with Lucille, the boy thought the girl, Blonde, attacked Lucille by mistake. She confused the jet of disinfectant in her face with attack coming from the other. The difference between the two was brutal. Coyote got close to a solar flare so intense that even the Black Plague, known to withstand extreme temperatures, was vaporized on the spot. Suddenly, Coyote felt hungry. The mad rat doctor realized that the boy was not feeding a good time. He didn't know she needed energy in a way so primitive to try to solve. Gave something he considered nutritious. One immense dragon of chaos that was asleep. The dragon woke up and asked to be released. The boy joked and said he should become food for the ultimate calamity. The mad rat doctor thought it was a waste. The dragon species was rare. Even so, Zhao insisted, if Koyer devoured, could reach the second supreme form. So he ordered her to feed on the creature. Koyer climbed onto the dragon. He started to cry, because he didn't want to die. She tried to bite him hard, but felt pain in her teeth, and soon started crying too. The protagonist gave up on the idea, and gave her a cup of instant noodles. As Koyer didn't understand any of that, he explained. After 3 minutes the food was ready. She was enchanted with that. The boy offered the chopsticks, but she didn't even wait. Ate with her bare hands, found the taste wonderful, and started to cry, as if it were the best food in the world. The protagonist thought that was exaggerated. For him, crying over instant noodles was shameful. Even so, she ate everything and was still hungry. He handed over several other cups. She didn't stop. When it came to the last one, it had already passed an hour. Then she started eating everything she found around the house. The boy took a gun, trying to protect his last pack of waffles, with chocolate and hazelnut. When he saw that she wasn't going to stop, he decided to eat everything at once so there wouldn't be a fight. But Koala was strange. Tried to get even what he had already eaten, straight from his mouth. Meanwhile, the mad rat doctor, protecting his secret cheese stash. It was a special collection hidden in a corner of the base. Koala started sniffing, and ended up finding the hiding place used. The arm skillfully and fell straight into the rat's stock. For him, stealing the protagonist's snacks, it was still acceptable, but taking his cheeses was serious. Before he could react, Koala appeared with absurd speed and disarmed him. The protagonist was completely shocked. There was nothing more he could do. Koala started opening the poor cheese packages. Mad rat doctor. She ate them all, didn't leave a single crumb behind. For the rat, she was no longer the final calamity, but the final gluttony. After that, she was arrested again. Through practical tests, it was proven that she did not possess any resistance to caloric sweets. To make matters worse, they decided to maximize her appetite. And now she only thought about consuming more calories, completely out of control. Not even the sesame seeds in the kitchen were spared. What was most intriguing, XL was the silence of the mad rat doctor. In fact, he couldn't say a word anymore. Was suffering too much. A total of 400 blocks of cheese, from the most expensive brand in the world, including 10 with autographs, was devoured in one go. In his view, that test creature was the cruelest being Isel had ever created. Angrily, the rat wanted to cut the girl into 1,200 pieces, but Isel was trying to calm him down. Even so, the rat thought of several ways to get revenge. But upon realizing that the protagonist was determined to defend her at any cost, he ended up giving up. Still, Isel recognized that Koyer deserved a punishment. If nothing was done, they wouldn't be able to eat anything else on base, especially desserts. It was then that he made a decision. Gave the girl a few spanks, as her mental age was equivalent to that of a 2- or 3-year-old child. That seemed to be the best way to correct her behavior. He himself had learned that from his mother. Each slap had a reason, and after applying the punishment, Isaac believed she wouldn't do that again. After that, they got ready. They would need to go out shopping. On the other hand, she continued with the same appearance as always. According to the protagonist, she should at least change her appearance to go out. Then they used teleportation to another location. However, she was afraid of the noise the machine made. After every trip, arriving at the new destination was the city of Gordon, what the protagonist called the paradise of crime. The eternal flame of Gordon Siri, known as the Great Beacon Without Night, was 1,188 meters high. Among the 32 teleportation points in the city, that was Zhao's favorite, because of the stunning view. Instead of going straight to the department store, Zhao thought it best to first buy normal clothes for Koyer. He held on tightly and jumped. Used his anti-gravity chemistry to cushion the fall and not end up dying. In the process, they arrived at Camilla Golden Avenue. The girl was impressed with the large gold statue that was there. But while the protagonist was distracted, Koyer disappeared. He looked around confused. Then, to his misfortune, saw that the girl was on top of the golden statue. As if nothing was happening, Koyer signed to the boy. He was completely enraged, immersed in his own problems, while Dr. Rat took the moment to buy a hot dog. When Dr. Rat arrived at the scene, he realized there were several agents scattered around and wanted to understand what was happening. He walked away for a few minutes, and during that time, because of several problems caused, the authorities demanded that Coer leave the place, since Camilla's statue was one of the tourist spots most important in the city. Dr. Rat, cowardly as always, pretended he didn't know Coer and left. Meanwhile, the protagonist launched a gas bomb into the air. When the smoke took over everything, he swore to himself that he would never take that girl out of the base again. The crazy Dr. Rat took advantage of the confusion and attacked all the authorities he could see, using a knife. While he did that, he wanted Isel to take her away, since he himself would make a distraction. But Isel was already annoyed enough for having seen the rat, trying to escape in the middle of the crowd. Later, upon arriving at a store, Isel touched the window and an employee got angry, warning that he couldn't do that. That employee was the executive manager of Golden Family. The manager said that Zal's sweat could damage the glass. Delicate and expensive. The protagonist then wanted to know from the rat, what could they do with that kind of people? The rat, provoking, also touched the window and went further. Started gluing money notes with saliva on the glass. The protagonist apologized to the employees with ironic tone. Upon seeing that the two had money, the employees completely changed their behavior. The manager himself started taking the notes stuck on the window. Then, he wanted to know what the protagonist wanted to buy, and Zao explained that he wanted clothes for Cure. The manager then asked what kind of clothes she was looking for, but as Cure couldn't speak properly yet, there was no answer. Even so, the manager was enchanted by her beauty and thought her face perfect. Isel ordered the manager to bring the best evening dresses and allow her to try them on one by one. The store employees dragged Cor, but she was desperate for being away from her master. While waiting, Isel decided to sit down, and Dr. Rat began to observe the hats in the store. After 20 minutes, the employees warned that Cor didn't want to try anything and asked the protagonist to talk to her. Isel was forced to wait outside the fitting room. Then, Cor appeared wearing a dazzling red dress, and even he was impressed by her appearance. The manager tried to please, saying that the dress matched the client's girlfriend perfectly, but Isel cut that kindness off immediately and made it clear that Cor was just an employee. Even so, that outfit still didn't meet Isel's demanding standards. Therefore, the rabbit started testing several different models, but none seemed to form enough to satisfy the young man's taste. Suddenly, a rather flashy car parked in front of the store. As soon as it stopped, some subordinates got out quickly, extend a rug on the floor, so that the person inside the vehicle could leave elegantly. The manager was desperate when he realized who it was. He had forgotten that Haigong Ruonai had arranged to go to the store that night. Not knowing what to do, Sen Isel, Cure, and Dr. Rat hide in the fitting room for a few minutes, begged them to help him, because if they were discovered there, everyone would be punished without mercy. Soon after, a girl with short black hair, called Reigongwi Ruonai, entered the store. She complained about the cold in her feet. Her subordinate, called Akatengu, didn't waste time and used his blades to set the floor on fire, creating heat to warm the noble's feet. As soon as she actually entered the establishment, the manager welcomed her. However, Ruonai was extremely rude and direct. She said she wanted to see a specific item from the catalog. The Dr. Rat had no idea who the Raigong were, but Isel knew very well. He knew that one as one of the family's most influential nobles in the region. The problem was that the item the noble wanted was distant, and the black carpet stretched out until then wasn't long enough to get there. Without her stepping directly on the common floor, Katingo considered that a shame. For her, it was unacceptable for the maneuver had gone to a neighborhood of commoners and was being received so carelessly. The store's subordinates began to apologize desperately, even though it was a small mistake. Still, the Katingo began to threaten them with something that everyone seemed to recognize. Immediately, they started to tremble and drew their blades. They would perform the so-called ritual of the blade heart. Suddenly, A man in a hat appeared on the scene. With a calm aura, he used words inspired by Buddhism to bring peace. It was another one-eye guard, called King Gongzinho. With his presence, the violence was contained. The subordinates thanked, believing they had been spared. But the calm didn't last long. Chico attacked with his own spear, without mercy. Meanwhile, One-Eye continued walking towards Witten, who wanted to see, without hesitating, stepped on the body of one of the men, who was lying on the ground, using him as if he were part of the carpet. Dr. Rado was impressed with how absurd and arrogant the nobles could be. Jazel saw a great opportunity there. He intended to kidnap that girl, because he knew that nobles almost never left the Golden District. That was a chance, rare and perfect to get an amount absurd of money. For the rat, the plan was completely insane. He thought stealing banks and deceiving the patrol department of security was already enough. But messing with a global noble was beyond any acceptable limit. Even so, Isel was determined, was going to restore his family's greatness. And that's why, was willing to go all the way with that idea. The rat doctor. But he didn't agree with that crazy plan at all. When the manager finally decided to show the item to Ruonai, everyone was shocked. The product was completely damaged, and the disappointment was immediate. Ruonai was incredulous at the manager's audacity in presenting something so despicable to her. Katingo quickly pulled out her blade, and Shingu, when observing the situation, concluded that not even the Buddha could save those people at that moment. Meanwhile, the rabbit, curious about what was happening outside, tried to peek, but because she wasn't used to walking in high heels, slipped and ended up pulling Izao and the rat doctor out of the dressing room. With her, seeing an opportunity to get rid of that situation, the manager pointed to the three and said that Izao was responsible for all of that. The rat doctor believed at that moment that they were all going to die. Katingo grabbed Izao as if he had no weight at all. The protagonist, in turn, did not object. This made Katingo furious. In response, she prepared to tear out his eyes, because she simply didn't like his face. But Ruonai ordered her to stop, said she liked the dress the supposed guilty had modified. In truth, Zal hadn't touched that dress. The manager had blamed him only to avoid being punished. This revelation caught the three by surprise. Katingwin then released the boy, and Zao was divided between launching the poisonous gas bomb he was holding, or simply take advantage of all that chaos and watch it unfold. Of events, one way or another, knew he would be in the headlines. The next day, Ronald directly revealed that he knew who he was, and also what he intended to do. Since he entered the store, he had already realized that Isaac had in mind some dangerous intention. This surprised the trio, because none of them imagined that the girl had noticed his presence from the beginning. But Runai's interpretation was very different from what the protagonist expected. She believed that Zhao wanted a chance to get closer to the Regan family, and that knowing she would visit the store, he cut the dress on purpose and created an accident to arise suddenly in front of her. For Ruonai, all that was a plan, elaborated to get her attention and get a place by her side. And Zao couldn't believe she really thought so. To his surprise, Ruonai not only believed in that theory, but also said that because of that, she would give him a chance. She ordered Zao to kneel and kiss her feet, so that she would then consider letting him be her servant. The Katingu, observing, was astonished. She had never seen Ruonai do anything like that. It was the first time the noble allowed a man to kiss her feet. But even so, after the kiss, she intended to step on him. The protagonist made it clear, in no uncertain terms, that he didn't want to kiss a smelly foot. Everyone was incredulous at Izao's audacity to say that. Besides that, he found it strange that Ruonai, being from such a rich family, doesn't have a pair of shoes. And in fact, he had a good point in the end. The comment was so unexpected that it made Ruonai start to cry. She tried to explain, saying that she perfumes her feet every day. When she was about to slap Isel, he decided he was going to throw the gas grenade. The escort appeared quickly and held the girl's hand to protect her master. With that, she ended up picking fight with Ruonai's red subordinate. And Zhao thought that was terrible. But Rone told Katengo to put away her sword, because she understood everything. She knew that I liked Zhao and wanted to keep her safe. The way Rone spoke left Katengo dying of shame. She thought that someone had let the boss read novels, and if the family leader found out, everyone would be in trouble. Runai was bothered by the blonde girl's silence. Didn't know which family she came from, but said she wouldn't give up on something she wanted. That's why she wanted Seal to say a price. But Isa thought that the one who should give the price was herself. Ruonai at that moment, taking advantage of the confusion, he introduced himself firmly, titled himself the greatest villain in Gordon City, and the family's genius alchemist. Persurate. Katengu tried to protect her boss, but Iso had already thrown the poisonous smoke grenade. Chinko began to weaken, and Iso took the opportunity to carry the girl. Dr. Rat, while running with the rabbit, said their leisure days were over. But Iso used the third version of the grenade, which caused memory distortion in those who inhaled it. The gas worked. The two bodyguards were confused. Tin Siu said nonsense, and Katengo said she had seen a fat man, full of freckles with white hair. After tying up Ruonai, they welcomed, saying she was at the base of the #1 villains in Gordon Siri. But Cure appeared and ruined the whole scene. Dark that they were trying to create. She took the tape off Ruonai's mouth and laughed to see that the city's most feared villains didn't even know how to tie a gag properly. The rat doctor was left speechless after their professionalism as villains was ridiculed. Ruana and had completely let go. And while they were arguing about it, she disappeared when they realized she was sitting eating potatoes next to the final calamity. Isel got angry and pointed the gun at her, saying she shouldn't cause more problems. Otherwise, he would use the terror of alchemy. But Ruana replied that her family's torture methods were much worse. She gave the example of the crushing pulse, a punishment where the criminal was arrested, with arms and legs open, while thin iron plates were being placed on the body until it was completely crushed. Ruonai gave 3 examples of situations. Still scared, the curious crazy rat doctor asked hypothetically if there was any chance that the Rei Hong family wouldn't mistreat them if they returned the girl. However, Ruonai made it clear that this would not happen. In her vision, if it was with her own family, it would be much worse. They would keep kidnappers alive, but in constant suffering, as if he were in hell. She then started playing with the minds of the two. After confusing them a bit, said she could even ask her family not to do anything against them. For that, I wanted you to accept a proposal, and even offered to pay a good amount of money if they agreed to a condition. Her request was to join the group, wanted to become a member of that secret base, because she was bored and thought she could have fun committing crimes alongside them. She was quite impressed with the weapon the protagonist created, capable of incapacitating the Katengu and Shinso, and wanted to finance his next inventions. To show that she was serious, revealed a black card, indicating that it had a virtually infinite limit. The protagonist suspected there was another condition besides that, and he was right. Ruana explained that to accept the Excel money, would have to listen to everything she said. Before the protagonist could think, the rat answered in his place, showing more interest in the money than in the decision itself. This irritated the protagonist, because the rat was making decisions for him, respecting his role as head of the Persired family. Even so, the rat thought that accepting would be advantageous. With someone funding the operations, they could focus entirely on crimes capable of destroying the planet. But the protagonist, as leader of the Persired family, did not agree, believed that his family would never accept any kind of charity. According to him, what the rat should do now was to poison the girl with spider venom, drag and tie her up again, and in 24 hours, send a criminal letter to the King Hong family, demanding a ransom. However, Ruonai replied that this would be useless. Her family wouldn't pay a penny for the King Rong. Any kidnapped member was considered an abandoned child. They didn't negotiate with kidnappers. They only hunted and tortured those responsible, without mercy. It was then that Ruonai changed her mind, said she would offer an even larger amount of money, but didn't want to be commander of anything. Just wanted help with one thing. Wanted the group help kill the current head of the family. King Hong, a man named King Rong Jinju, who was actually her own father. She believed that the greatest villain in the city of Gordon, as was the case with the protagonist, would not be afraid to accept this type of mission. After that, the three were sitting at a luxurious table, eating lobsters. As payment, it would only be to kill the girl's father. The young Zhao decided to accept the job. She had already advanced the payment with 20 million in gold, which was more than the profit from robbing 10 banks. Meanwhile, Katengo and Shinso were being severely punished. The leader of the King Hong family was furious. For him, who couldn't even protect their own lords, should be discarded as trash. Even wounded, Katengo promised the leader that, if he had one more chance, he would be able to bring back the young Ruonai. The protagonist couldn't believe the words of Akutengu, because she didn't even remember what they were like. Kidnappers. In the face of that humiliating situation, Akutengu was already thinking about performing the heart of the blade ritual, preferring to die with honor than to continue like that. However, everything changed when Ruana appeared suddenly and asked her father to stop, because she had already returned to see her daughter. The leader of King Hong family immediately dropped what he was doing and ran to hug her, was clearly relieved and happy to see her well. After the reunion, Kitengo sincerely thanked her young boss for saving both her. How much Shinso? To show gratitude, Rone, with her typical lightness, offered a package of chips to Kitengo, claiming it was delicious. Kitengo, suspicious, hesitated, knew the boss had forbidden completely any kind of junk food, and suspected it was the influence of the commoner with whom the girl had walked. But Ruonai just told her to stop complaining. I experimented. When he finally tasted it, Kitengo was delighted with the taste. Still, wanted to know how the Ruonai had escaped the kidnappers. But the black-haired girl preferred to keep this detail a secret. At that moment, the protagonist already knew all the secrets of that family, knew that they were extremely prepared, with security cameras spread throughout the place. Despite this, Isaac decided he no longer wanted any involvement with the Rone beyond the mission to take down her father. For him, as soon as they eliminate the leader of the Hong family, would have no more worries with costs or operating expenses. At the end of the day, the protagonist still managed to get revenge on Ruonai for the fact that she laughed at him during the failed kidnapping plan. Before she left, he learned lightly just to tickle her feet, knowing she hated it too. For him, that was a form of torture, because even being something silly still made her angry. It was so Machiavellian that he created a contraption with feathers that moved quickly, causing as much discomfort as possible. Meanwhile, the luxury store manager was in a long conversation with the police officer. The store had suffered a loss of more than 800,000 because the protagonist left there with Ruana and taking 3 exclusive design pieces. The problem was that the 2 subordinates of the family, King Hong, Akutengo, and Shinku, gave completely different descriptions of the people involved, which hindered the entire investigation. The police officer couldn't trust any of the versions, but the manager remembered the 2 invaders very well. One was a deaf and rare humanoid being, and the other was a black-haired boy with a slanted fringe. At that moment, a new figure emerged on the scene. Barbara Poliak, the newly appointed boss of the security patrol office of the district of Lighthouse. She had personally decided to help the store manager. The office staff were in shock upon discovering that she was the new boss. One of them, a half-bull hybrid, half-human, commented that she had been transferred directly to that department by someone very influential. Most of the officers were gossiping about her. But right at that moment, Barbara appeared, leaving everyone terrified, trying to disguise. The employees quickly stated that they were just waiting for their orders. But Barbara was not like the old bureaucrats who liked to show off. The work style was cheerful, in love, and completely out of the ordinary. To motivate the team, she announced that any officer who delivered significant clue about important cases would have the right to date her. This made everyone desperate, running to solve as many cases as possible, just to get the new boss's attention. With a photo where the protagonist held the final calamity, Barbara Poliak was certain that she would be able to capture that boy, who ignored all the laws. She herself had taken the photo in Camilla Square, and if she hadn't been there at that moment, maybe everything would have gone unnoticed. In the city of Gordon City, in the Lighthouse District, two employees were standing in front of the theater when the protagonist passed by the place, along with the courier. The girl's presence was quite striking because of her appearance and posture. During the walk, Coer saw a painting with the image of a man who looked a lot like her father, and that deeply shook. 2 hours later, the protagonist wanted to know if Dr. Crazy Rat had already drawn the map, but the rat stated that, memorizing the location of each trash can from the district. The real problem, however, was that Coer had simply disappeared. The man in the painting appeared soon after. He approached the girl and asked if she was a fan of his, pulling conversation and wanting to know her name. But Coer knew how to speak, which made the moment awkward. Soon after, the man's daughter appeared and confirmed that that was her father, called Mario. Gilman also appeared on the scene, but before Maro could introduce Coer to her, the blonde girl disappeared out of nowhere. Outside, the rain started suddenly. Even without a forecast in the weather, Air walked through the drenched city without caring, passed through busy streets and dark alleys, where there were all kinds of people. Her elegant attire made others believe she was a socialite, which made her presence in those areas even stranger. She was shaking a lot and was clearly feeling bad. It was then that a white-haired woman found her and asked if she was lost. Realizing that Koala was very pretty, invited her to join the organization called Mill Birds. However, to enter the group, Coer would need to abandon her clothes and contribute something to the organization. Coer refused to hand over the clothes she was wearing, as it had been a gift from her master. The woman thought the girl was confusing things and, annoyed, slapped her in the face. Even so, Coer resisted. Then the woman decided to act. The force tore part of the girl's clothes with violent cuts, leaving her injured. Meanwhile, the mad rat doctor was on the streets, sniffing the ground in search of the final calamity. His keen sense of smell led to an alley. But there he found a surprise. Unpleasant. The place was taken over by gangsters and was known to be the headquarters of the Thousand Birds organization. The rat knew that all the women in that group were dangerous, which meant that the final calamity had probably gotten into big trouble. After leaving the girl all bloody on the floor, the white-haired girl who was the boss thought that was necessary to teach how things worked in that place. Then, the boss of the Thousand Birds called the crow, because she thought that maybe that girl was an agent, infiltrated, and therefore, they should read, just to try to find some clue. Upon entering the blonde girl's mind, the crow saw that she spent her days locked inside a cell, along with other children, all fighting each other for a single crumb of food. That's because the Doberman who threw food believed that any dog that doesn't fight for food would not survive in that place. Seeing this, the crow was quite surprised with the identity of that woman. Meanwhile, the protagonist was threatening a man, wanting to know if he had seen a very beautiful woman wearing a golden dress. If he didn't know how to answer, he would suffer the consequences. The protagonist was in a bad mood because he had lost an important experiment. The man then reported that the local boss had taken the girl in order to teach her a lesson. He also indicated the way for the group could get to the place. When they arrived at the scene, it looked like a horror movie. There were several bodies lying everywhere. Several people were dead. They started investigating the bodies and realized that most of the cuts were concentrated in the throat. They were fatal blows applied on purpose. Isel thought it was all very strange. If Coer had entered berserk mode, he wanted to understand why all the wounds were located in the throat. Meanwhile, the local leader was lying down, completely bloodied and asking for help. The rat recognized who it was by the tattoo. She was the leader of the Thousand Birds, known as Silver Phoenix. Isel believed they should revive him as soon as possible, so they could ask what happened there. They applied an emergency injection with healing factor. 3 minutes later, the Silver Phoenix was already much better, as they had saved her life. Isaac wanted to know what happened, and if that was related to a woman dressed in golden clothes. However, the Silver Phoenix was in a state of absolute panic and couldn't answer anything. At the same time, Crow had his hand easily broken by Core. At that moment, Core's hair had changed color, returning to its original color. On a rainy night, the strongest hellhound, called Doberman, suddenly appeared in front of Core. Besides him, Isel was also present, and made it clear that now or in the future, she would have a master, and that master would be him. Even Core was surprised to see the boy there. But Doberman wanted to know where she knew. That man. She explained that it was Isa himself, the one who had saved her life. Now she was completely different, even managing to speak normally. Doberman realized that the boy had fixed her vocal cords and understood that she had been well treated. Therefore, he began to consider that perhaps she could betray him because of Isel. But she refused that possibility. Even so, Doberman gave the order for her to kill Isel, and that shook the girl. He still had other plans for when she concluded this task. Then, she walked up to the boy and made it clear with a look that he shouldn't have followed her. Her posture had changed completely, as if she had returned to what she was before. Isa believed that since he had saved, she belonged to the Perserade family, and if she didn't come back with him, would receive a punishment. The rabbit remembered the spanks she had already received, and that filled her with anger. Without thinking twice, she advanced against the boy, with the intention of shutting him up. But Lucilia appeared at that moment, and managed to protect Isel. For an instant, she was there to resolve the pending issues she still had with him. Isel didn't want Lucilia use the Black Plague on the Coera, as this could serve as a trigger, and make the situation even more difficult if the purple-haired girl lost control. With that, while the two prepared to fight, Isel understood that, to protect his high-risk experiment, he would have to destroy the hellhounds. But the Doberman showed no fear, and was willing to end him. The rabbit then looked back and asked the Doberman to wait 1 minute. Even so, suddenly, the hellhound advanced against the Isel and attacked him directly in the neck. It was at that moment that the boy felt the true strength of the dogs of hell. The Doberman already expected the protagonist to be a failure. Masakura was indignant with that attack and tried to hit him. He called her Yorkshire, and in that instant, he was already beginning to consider that she was really betraying his pack. While holding her fist, he noticed that the girl was trying to hit him hard. Lucille was impressed when she realized she couldn't contain the core. Then realized that the girl had cut her own arm, something that seemed impossible until then. With a lot of anger, Core made it clear to the Doberman that she had only asked for a minute. The Doberman began to suspect that she really wanted to save the boy, and among the hellhounds, the main rule is not to have feelings for absolutely no one. Isel got up next and showed that he was okay. He had injected factors of cell proliferation in himself in advance to prevent his own death. In truth, that attack had only been a test to see if the color still kept some memory of him, even being under the influence of the person of the hellhounds. For him, it would be pathetic to die like that, and thought this kind of trap was completely outdated. In the end, he said he wanted her to come back to him because he was her master. However, Core responded with a direct punch to his face. The Doberman was confused by that, because he expected the girl to defend the boy and not attack him. Already Lucille was outraged to see that woman hitting on her precious master, and promised that as soon as she fixed her hand, she would kill her. The Chwayer made it clear that she was no longer that girl, blonde from before, and warned that if Isel continued to insist, she wouldn't hold back anymore. Even before that, the boy believed that the situation was not so simple. He decided to use something that was linked to her effective memory. Picked up the teddy bear that was part of Core's past, because he believed that she still cared about that object. For him, the girl didn't need to transform into a simple killing machine in the service of dogs. Infernal. Instead of that, she should seek a meaning for her existence, and she would only achieve that by his side, and the world where she could love and also be loved. The Doberman thought it was all a waste of time. For him, this world that the boy believed simply did not exist. And besides, Isel would never have a chance to see him. The Doberman considered that the Yorkshire was weak and agitated, too emotional. Because of that, she wasn't fit to be a hellhound. By his side, the Doberman had a legion of soldiers. He then gave the order for everyone to kill the enemies there. This included not only Cor and Isel, but also Mad Rat Doctor and Lucille. But Isel had an ace up his sleeve. He found the Doberman strange, still relying on the strength of numbers. At least, he had managed to gather the members of his own clan in that location, and now he could finish them all at once. With a gun, Isel fired a projectile into the sky. That opened, releasing a type of dust into the air that started falling slowly. Going back an hour, Isel and the Mad Rat were with the Silver Phoenix. They learned from her that the girl's personality, blonde, had been replaced by the person of a hellhound. At that moment, the protagonist walked through the ring and seemed quite worried. He reflected on what could happen if the hellhound's personality had access total to the left arm of the Angel of Extinction and the right eye of the Jade Empress. If this were true, the leader of the hellhounds could awaken evil and dangerous memories. With this risk in mind, the Isel concluded that the only solution would be to release Lucille. Only she would be able to contain the high-risk experiment that he had created. The two followed to the place where Lucilia was. He believed she had woken up, still on the night she was injured, and that she was just pretending to be in distress, so she wouldn't have to go back to the same place as before. Furthermore, her memory factors had already been transcribed in reverse into her own RNA, and if the Black Plague virus hadn't been eliminated yet, she could die at any moment. The virus would replicate automatically inside the host body and would rebuild her organism. That way, ISA thought he had created something as brilliant as Lucille. For him, she was practically immortal because of this special condition. With her still inside the tank, he wanted to know how long she would continue pretending she was unconscious. He warned that if she kept this up for too long, would miss a great opportunity, and she quickly replied, proving that she was fully conscious. While all this was happening, Barbara was hidden inside an ice cream and candy truck that she used as a disguise. Despite being on a mission, she seemed to be on vacation, enjoying the comfort of that environment. Her subordinate complained that she had put too many things unnecessary in the budget, and that donut-themed truck was extremely expensive. But Barbara tried to justify her decisions, saying that it was a great disguise and that, from then on, she would use the vehicle as her personal office. Before the boy could insist on the idea that it was a mistake, she shoved a sweet in his mouth to shut him up. At this moment, they received an emergency. A dragon had been spotted on the Neon Bridge. Stream Bay. Cross Bridge. That was exactly how Barbara wanted to work, maintaining order and security without wasting time. Therefore, she started driving her donut truck towards the incident site. However, the other workers were left outside and were quite frustrated with this attitude. In the White Queen's residence, the president was in his moment of rest, but one of his subordinates appeared to report that a dragon had appeared on the bridge, Neon Stream Bay, and this was already causing great commotion. The girl who brought the information was called Joanna and was the White Queen's hero liaison officer. Despite this, standard procedure said that situations like this should be resolved first by the Security Patrol Department. If they failed, then lower-ranking heroes would be sent. Only in the event that everyone fails, the president would act directly. However, Joanna did not agree with the guard's position. She believed that the situation had already gotten completely out of control, and that his presence was needed immediately. Meanwhile, the dragon devoured all the dogs infernal present on the bridge. It was at this moment that the Doberman remembered the protagonist's family name, Tercerate, an ancient lineage of alchemists with hundreds of years of history. Lucilia thought that, instead of worrying about his subordinates, the Doberman should worry about himself. She then wanted to know what disease was so. He questioned, would die? She suggested some possibilities, but soon remembered that the name of his organization was literally Hellhounds, and that is why they would die of rabies. It was the most appropriate destiny for them all. Now Cor had two choices. Or she would pick up the teddy bear, which meant she would be accepting being part of the family, persired, or take her gun, which would indicate her loyalty, unwavering to the hellhounds. Isel believed she would pick up the teddy bear. He had made a mental play to associate the object with him. But to his surprise, she simply picked up the blade. The boy was confused. Cor just handed the weapon to him to hold for a moment. She wanted to solve everything with her own hands. She was ready to settle accounts with the enemies. In front of her. Meanwhile, Roanna was watching all the movement from afar, seeing the hellhounds starting to retreat. Lacilia commented that they were nothing but cowards. But Isaac warned over the communicator that the Doberman was manipulating the Yorkshire to follow him to an ambush. When she heard that, she ran back and protected her master. Yorkshire went towards the Doberman, determined to face him. But he believed she couldn't beat him. After all, he was her mentor. He knew all her moves. If it wasn't for him, her stepmother would still be tormenting her life. It was at this moment that Yorkshire stuck her own blade in the palm of her hand. Isa didn't understand the reason for this gesture. The Doberman, on the other hand, widened his eyes when he saw what she was doing. The eyes, the throat, the arms, the hands, the abdomen, the chest, the legs and feet. Each part of the body should receive a stab. Needs a trained dog. The blade pierced muscle and bone. If the individual did not die within 10 breaths, he would be allowed to leave the hellhound. That was the only way to leave the organization, as she had already given a stab. Then the other 12 would be done by the Doberman. He knew she was aware. Survive the 13 blades of fangs was almost impossible. That was a miracle. The protagonist orders her to stop, as her body was his property. But the girl had already made it clear that this was a business. Personal. She did not accept interference. And if he insisted, she would turn him into a corpse. The protagonist did not like. Not a bit of the girl's personality. Of the hellhounds. In the end, the Doberman thought she was far inferior to her mother. Her mother would have stuck the knife in his throat. Without hesitation. This revelation surprises the girl, as she did not expect him to know her mother. However, now it didn't matter what was said anymore. The mother of Yorkshire had been the strongest leader the dogs Hellish have ever had. She was also the master of the Doberman himself. He thought it was a shame that she had fallen in love with a simple actor. She got pregnant. The organization did not like. The two began to be persecuted. In the end, the Doberman himself was ordered to kill his mistress. Before dying, she had finished sewing a teddy bear to give to her daughter. He awakened the girl's fury. She was willing to kill him with her own hands. The fight began. She was hit 3 times in the face. The Doberman realized that sentimentalism had left her weak, but he had also been injured. A direct hit to the heart. He didn't expect it. She had learned the technique of depth fissure, cardiac. Only this blow would be able to kill him. She remembered that the only one who could defeat him should know this technique. The Doberman finally understood that it was destiny. That movement had been taught by his master, and now it was the same movement used to kill him. The Yorkshire's voice was similar to that of the former leader. This destabilized him. She picked up a key he dropped. The protagonist believed that now that she had broken ties with the hellhounds, she would come back to him. But the girl simply releases from the bridge and falls into the sea. He loses sight of her until he notices something strange. There were bombs prepared at the top of the structure. A man with white hair and beard was ready to shoot. The protagonist tries to use his control, but realizes there is not enough energy. He had consumed the entire load of the alchemist matrix and gravity during the previous escape. An hour later, he finds a desperate man. The man just wanted to be spared because he believed that Yorkshire was fine. The protagonist. I wanted to understand why she was called that. The man explains that Yorkshire was just her code name within the organization. He also wanted to know if the girl still belonged to the hellhounds. But the man fearfully replies that she belonged to Isel. She was part of his family. He just got the words wrong. Now the hellhounds would be servants of Zal. But the protagonist wanted proof of this. The man then offers half of his hidden wealth on the ship. He delivers keys as a sign of loyalty. The protagonist accepts, but still finds it little. The man tries to offer even more, everything he had. But the protagonist wanted something specific. He wanted the girl who was around. The protagonist hands over the girl named Gi Aliana to the family. Persurate. Isel wanted to make sure that man wouldn't have no more interest. For her, he wished to see her being transformed into a family experiment. However, the man tried to convince that he was now a servant of Isel, so he would never disobey him. But he was lying. He planned to wait for the right moment. After obtaining the immortality technique, he intends to eliminate the Persurate family and all the nobles of the world. He returned to the throne, following the protagonist's orders, would continue to command the Hellhounds. For now, he was in a completely new body. The protagonist waited for him to give an order to the organization. But before he could say anything, he started bleeding from the nose. Then, the eyes also started to bleed. The Weasel watched that with amusement. The protagonist had forgotten to mention that he had injected him with an alchemy, secret of his family. This alchemy, in theory, could heal injuries and diseases. But the man did not understand why the body was like that. The problem was that the effects of the compound, Asafa 1, could be supported by the direct lineage of the family, Persired. That's why he ended up dying. The rat arrived at the location and received the key from the protagonist, asked him to keep an eye on the old man and not let him go to another world. Now the protagonist needed to find the girl. He had installed a tracker on the dagger of her knife. She couldn't run away, so he located her in the rain. She was already in her other form. He took her back to base. Now he needed to deal with Lucille and Ku, the two disputed guy, as if he wanted to tear a piece of him off. Watching through the monitors, the rat didn't know whether to envy the protagonist or pity him. He regretted having placed certain physical attributes in the experiments because of the promise made to Lucilio. The protagonist needed to fulfill, but he couldn't stand having them both anymore in the same room. Tried to push them away, demonstrating discomfort with the situation. He reminded them that they were just servants. If it continued like that, he would put them back in their tanks. Lucy, he became suspicious because he had made a promise. In the end, he gave in and allowed her to sleep with him. That night, Jocko, for having disobeyed previously, was sent to the couch. She didn't want that, but the protagonist needed to be firm, so she wouldn't cross the line anymore. Lucille made his night a living hell, was provoking all the time. When he finally had a moment of peace, began to write about the Hellhound incident, wanted to document everything that had happened. This made Lucille very sad. She decided to sleep outside crying. The protagonist couldn't believe what was happening, decided to lie on the bed to comfort her. She was very shaken, was locked for 1,322 days in one cell. Every minute and second she dreamed of a life by his side, imagined holding his hand and spending the day with him. She explained all this in tears. The protagonist had a soft heart, promised he would never leave her locked up again. Meanwhile, the rat was in the living room watching television. Ko arrived. She still obeyed the protagonist's order and went to sleep on the sofa. Was sad. The rat didn't understand why she was there. She ended up seeing what he was watching. The content was a girl playing volleyball. The rat gave her space to sit down, but didn't want to divide his TV time. He changed the channel to disguise. Then he told her that he needed to face Lucille, as she was the family's strongest experiment. Persurate. Seeing that the girl completely agreed, the rat decided to turn that into a real show, worthy of hell. He went to the protagonist's room and spread a sleeping gas there. Quite strong. The blonde girl was with him. Both wore masks. After he counted, even one wished the protagonist good dreams. The blonde girl then entered crawling into the room. The rat was very happy, because his plan had worked. Qualo entered and saw Lucille hugging the protagonist. Obviously she didn't like what she saw at all. But what she didn't know was that Lucille was awake. Lucille wanted to thank her and the rat for having launched the sleeping gas grenade. The protagonist really hadn't resisted. This provoked the blonde girl, who decided to fight against Lucille. Koera thought that Lucille was trying to devour the protagonist, but in reality, it was all a misunderstanding. Without wasting time, Koera activated the power of her left arm, which spread flames everywhere. Lucille recognized that this was not good at all. The girl functioned very differently. Then Lucille tried to negotiate. Said they could divide the love for Isel. For now, each one would sleep on one side of the bed. The blonde girl ended up accepting the proposal. But Lucille was plotting something. She would attack at the right time. Meanwhile, the poor thing dreamed that he was living the best moment of his life. In the dream, he was the emperor. But the dream was interrupted. He felt a weight on his body. Upon waking up, realized the girls were on top of him. That made him furious. To make matters worse, one of them had peed. The responsible one was Lucille herself. But she blamed Coir. This resulted in the girl's immediate banishment. Blonde from bed. It was an extremely embarrassing situation. If people found out that a high-risk experiment was peeing in bed, that would ruin the Perserade family's reputation. Lucille thought that with this, she would guarantee her position alongside Isel. But her plan failed miserably. The protagonist dismissed both. He gave a practical reason. Said she was too heavy, and rolled over him during the night. He also knew very well who had done it. Pee in bed. They were his two biggest experiments. But that didn't mean they should be on top. I deleted all the time. They weren't accessories. He wanted to end that once and for all. The girls didn't accept it so easily. They insisted on continuing to sleep with him, until the rat himself came to the room. The rat was already out of patience, determined to defend the leader of the Perserade family. In the end, he created a scale. Each girl would have a specific day to sleep with the protagonist, and always separately. The protagonist hated that idea. He hoped the rat would resolve the situation once and for all, but he only had helped the girls with this type of organization. But there was one detail. None of them were scheduled to sleep with him. On Sundays, the reason why none of the girls stayed with the protagonist on Sundays was simple. On Sundays, they had to go out to make money. Therefore, they couldn't be stuck with him all the time. The protagonist hated that whole organization. He got so irritated that he decided to shoot the doctor, crazy rat, with his weapon. It was just a form of retaliation for him having made that kind of decision. After everything, Isel decided to cut several days from the scale. In the end, there was only one day left for each girl. He came to the conclusion that either they stopped fighting, or they wouldn't have another chance to sleep in the same room as him. The two accepted the new rules. But Lucille wasn't silly, trying to show the protagonist that she was already very close to him. Meanwhile, Barbara received some confidential information. A boat had been invaded by Isel and the doctor, crazy rat. She wanted to obtain all available recordings from the ship. Her subordinate, who was in love with her, took the documents with great excitement. He even invited her to dinner. But she didn't have time for that. The protagonist was in the warehouse. Room 21. They thought it was time to carry out the new heist. Launch a grenade into the water, and the ship quickly locked down. They had eliminated the family's security patrol. King Hong. The city's heroes would lose their minds, trying to find out who was responsible for this. Without wasting time, the group raided the ship. They started looking for containers with the most valuable goods. But when breaking down one of the doors, they were surprised. There was a huge creature inside. A creature so big that it seemed impossible to be there. They noticed a mark engraved on the monster's body. It was the Perserade family symbol. The protagonist found that unbelievable. The rat suggested using the poison grenade of the spider dragon to try to contain the monster. But even so, he resisted. The protagonist then used his special weapon, the one who turned everything she touched into slime. The monster became soft, but still not enough. It was clear that she would face a real challenge. In the end, the rat thought it best to call Coir and Lucille to help. It would be safer with both of them nearby. Meanwhile, Lucille was at home, trying to smell the protagonist's scent. Coir saw what she was doing, and once again they began to disagree. But Coir didn't want to fight. Offered Lucille a fruit, promising it had a very good taste. Lucille refused, but Coir insisted. Put a piece of the fruit in her mouth. Lucille was very angry about this. While Coir thought they were best friends now, Lucille realized that what she had done before, in front of the protagonist, really messed with Coir. The protagonist wanted to know where the elf Garcia was. She was tied up inside the ship. He went to her. She was being attacked by a field. Electromagnetic. The boy turned off the system. Then, released the elf and shot her with an antidote. That would allow her to move again. After smelling the antidote, Garcia managed to recover her movements. But she wasted no time, grabbed her knife, and prepared to attack. The protagonist didn't want her to do that. Tentu Impedila. He made it clear that now she belongs to him. While the rat tried to deal with that creature, he realized that she adapted to extreme heat very fast, as he was already running out of projects. He needed to find something stronger to defeat her. However, Isel arrives warning the crazy rat doctor that it would not be necessary to look for anything stronger, because he had brought the elf only with the glow of her eyes. The monster ended up falling. The rat didn't understand how that monstrous child fell so suddenly. For a moment he thought the creature had died. But in reality, she just fell asleep. This happened because of the visual effect caused by the elf's eyes. She just wanted to go to another world. After that, they captured that huge monster that looked like an octopus, along with the other two monsters. In the end, they discovered that all the containers on that ship carried creatures similar. They awakened when they were exposed to the heat of the cutting weapon they used. What Weisel didn't understand was the tag stuck on each of the monsters. That tag had been developed by his mother, and as far as he knew, only Lucille had officially received that. It was then that Weisel remembered that symbol belonged to the Supreme Asita. This Asita was completely obsessed with divine power, and so fanatical that she had transformed their own bodies and souls into grotesque creatures. The records of his family showed that his mother had exterminated a large part of that sect, but some escaped using a dimensional portal and disappeared. The rat thought they still existed. Rebellious supreme alchemists hidden out there. Isel decided to interrogate Garcia, wanting to know where those creatures had come from. The girl was shaking a lot and said she just wanted to die without revealing anything. So he decided to use truth serum. But before that, someone called the phone. The rat answered and passed the call to Isel. Who had called was Roni. She wanted to know if the boy missed her. He said no, and that if she didn't have something urgent to say, he would hang up because he had a lot to do. While Isel was talking on the phone, the rat took advantage of the moment and injected truth serum into Garcia. The girl made a sound of fear. Roni heard the noise and asked what Isel was doing. Isel was furious with the rat for doing that without permission. To get around the situation, he told Roni that the crazy rat doctor was just playing a stupid joke. I wanted to hang up, as he had many experiments to take care of. Rona then revealed an important piece of information. Her father would be at the theater at 8 o'clock at night on a Sunday. After getting this information, he went back to interrogate Garcia. Even after applying 3 doses of the serum of the truth in the elf, it became clear that she really didn't know where the containers were. In the past, Isel's family tried to track down the Emerald Elves many times, but never managed to capture them. Isel was the first alchemist in history to capture an elf. Live Emerald. His new plan was to use Kor's right eye. The Emerald Elves were able to communicate at the soul level, using direct eye contact. That's what he wanted to test. He brought the bunny and ordered the blonde girl to look directly into the elf's eyes. If she did, he would give a chocolate as a reward. The bunny looked quickly without hesitation, but nothing happened. After 2 hours, Isel was frustrated and thought the girl should activate the queen's right eye, Emerald, in the same way he had done with his left arm. Or so he asked where Kor's mother was. At that instant, the eye activated immediately. The 2 girls stared at each other. Garcia wanted to understand why the girl had the eye of Her Majesty, the Empress herself. Isel was pleased that the plan had worked, and then asked the blonde girl to give the order. After that, Garcia went to him. He believed that everything had worked out well. He ordered her to kneel and call him master. Garcia simply explained that he couldn't call Mom by her name and rested her head on his chest. Isel became quite frustrated, trying to understand what was the order that the final calamity had given her. Meanwhile, Garcia hugged him, apologizing for leaving him alone for so long. Alone. She said she wanted to make amends. Isel was deeply annoyed by that. In his view, The mother was the greatest alchemist in the family's history, while Garcia was just an experiment. This made the girl very sad. But at the same time he saw her sadness, he also saw his own mother's sad face. Quickly, he tried to regain clarity, and had already understood everything. Then he ordered that the rat use the spider venom grenade dragon to subdue Garcia. The problem was that the final calamity had fallen asleep. He couldn't wake her up, and he remembered, at that moment, of the side effect of the host transplant, and the use of the Emerald Empress's right eye. This effect caused the individual to fall into a deep sleep. Therefore, Isaac ordered again that the rat face Garcia. She just took off her glasses. That was a problem. The rat fell to the ground immediately. Garcia didn't want anyone to interrupt the meeting she was having with her son. Isel was furious about that. He took his gun and told her not to move. He also ordered her to close her eyes. But Garcia kept walking towards him. She held his hand and pointed the gun to her own head, saying that if he hated his mother, he could pull the trigger. But upon seeing his own mother's face reflected in her, he lowered the gun. Garcia started to caress him. She knew he still loved his mother. But Isel was sure she wasn't the real one. Lucille was extremely angry that he had asked the blonde to use her power instead of her. Even so, she recognized that the girl's ability was much more stable than hers. It was then that Isel appeared, also bringing Garcia along. Lucilia thought she only had Cior as a rival, but now another girl had appeared. She wanted to understand the reason for that. Isaac made it clear that that was his mother, and that left Lucille completely confused. When Garcia touched her face, Lucille fainted. But it wasn't just her. Garcia also fainted soon after. Isaac had the Black Plague virus inhibitor. Improved. Lucille had injected this virus into the elf's body, and that's why he had to give her the injection. Garcia felt a lot of pain during the application. At that moment, the mental structure reinforcement field was activated because it detected the contamination in Isel's mind. This caused a recent memory loss. He didn't know what he was doing. Without understanding anything, Isaac began to reflect deeply, told Garcia to stand still and not move. For nothing, her farce as a mother was over. Even so, she held his hand and insisted. Isa said he would only call her mother on one condition. She would have to continue listening to his orders. From that moment on, he would take control, made it clear that he was an adult, and that she should call him by his name. In front of others, Garcia accepted, swore she would behave as if there no one around. She asked for a hug from the boy. After that moment, in which he couldn't hold back, outrageous things happened. In Lucy's opinion, he had put Garcia on the scale, and now they would have to share him with one more woman. Isel tried to explain, but the rat interrupted the conversation, because he thought there was still something important that they hadn't done. He wanted to go to the recovery unit of the 1,000 birds. Isel didn't understand the reason for wanting to rescue those idiots. In the end, the rat asked if he didn't think it was kind of funny, the fact that they were top-tier villains, and yet not having a single girl in the dormitory area. Isel became thoughtful about this. In the night dormitory at the Demon Kingdom headquarters, some women danced while the men drank. They discussed business values. Suddenly, the light went out, leaving everyone scared. One of the dancing girls saw something on the table. After one of the men lit a match, they realized that their boss's body was dead. Right there, behind a corpse, was the symbol of the hero of City Number 7. Without thinking, everyone grabbed their weapons. But something bizarre happened. The boss got up and started bleeding from intensely. Not only him, the girls also started behaving strangely and killed all the men present. Only one girl had survived and begged not to die. The mysterious being thought that filthy leeches seeking profit deserved to die, but in her case, the final judgment would decide whether she would live or die. After that, a girl was worried about the documents that could get wet with the rain. She was an assistant to the night district counselor, called Chun Ka-kian. She was quite surprised to see the night counselor's building in the Glory City district. The boss was dead there. The news reported that the most arrogant leader of a drug gang, known as AL, had been killed. along with the oldest members of the group. Behind the bodies was again the city hero emblem. Number 7. As the sun went down, in that forest of steel and concrete, shadows began to swallow the last ray of light. Evil spread uncontrollably in the dark, as if they were bacteria. No one knew if who would provide security. To the night district would be the district council or the patrol department. Compared to corrupt businessmen and employees, the people of the night district had already given their answer. They were against drug dealers. The cruel angel, lurking in the darkness, was the city's hero, the judge of all evil, the night referee. That city belonged to the Perserade family. Before returning, he wouldn't let anyone dirty the city, not even an insect or a fly. Meanwhile, ISA was with the rat, watching the bodies of the girls from the organization. 1,000 birds in their places. Phoenix was very worried about her girls. The rat wanted to calm her down, saying that they wouldn't outsource anything. They themselves would bring the girls back to life. But the rat wanted to know if they were willing to give up completely of their freedoms. He was interested in having them as servants. The Phoenix accepted. She knew there was no other way. Taking advantage of the situation, the rat, who considered himself a man of culture, ordered the Phoenix exchange her clothes for a maid uniform. The Phoenix, who one day had sworn never to accept again orders from men and promised to live only for himself, was now completely surrendered. Everything had become a joke. Even with that past, she ended up wearing the maid's clothes. The protagonist ended up fighting with a rat for spending too much money buying stockings. He thought this attitude was totally unhappy, but the rat knew how to convince him. He explained that he had obtained a necklace of 5th-generation alchemy burr restriction. This necklace would allow monitoring and control, in real time, of the Phoenix's body and mind. The main core that would do this was the family itself, Perserade. That marked the beginning of a true nest of nightmares that she would face. If the necklace detected any negative fluctuation in Phoenix's psychic field, in case she tried to remove or damage the device, he would electrocute. She would never forget that pain. Besides that, if this fluctuation passed a certain limit, the necklace would activate the director of an alchemy matrix that reached directly to the soul. This would cause the Phoenix to become an empty body. In an instant, the rat was excited the sheep in uniform and thought it suited her very well. The two then prepared to start the work of restoring the girls from the 1,000 Birds group. But the protagonist refused immediately. He explained that resurrection bioexperiments were secrets, top secret of his family. Even so, the Phoenix tried to convince him. She had already put on the necklace, had already sworn loyalty to the Perserade family. She believed there was no reason to distrust her. She would never betray the secrets of that family. The protagonist recognized that the rat was skilled in making her accept the necklace. The crazy rat doctor considered himself the most evil assistant that ever existed. The protagonist then decided he would treat the Phoenix as his second assistant. For now, even if she called him master. He made it clear he didn't like that. He suggested she find another way to call him.